All episodes of A Trial by Podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only. Much to their parents' dismay, neither host is a lawyer, journalist, or investigator. Just two people with microphones and Wi-Fi. All actions discussed are alleged, and all parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. For the full legal mumbo-jumbo, check the show notes.
Optimism isn't sunshine and rainbows. It's fixing things, changing the way we fix things. It's running the world on smarter energy. Because if optimism never stops, then change can't either. GE Vernova, the energy of change.
What if an appliance emergency didn't have to be? If your appliances suddenly decided they were done, don't stress. Best Buy has you covered with a wide variety of major appliances from trusted brands, in stock and available now. So you don't have to worry about laundry piling up, refilling the fridge, or that big dinner party you're hosting. Because Best Buy has the knowledge and expertise to get you the right appliance for your home. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
Hey, Olivia from Ollie here to help you ease into all things back to school. Homework, meal prep, and pickup duty piling up? Goodbye Stress Gummies help you keep your cool. Start the day with Kids Multi and Probiotic for digestive and immune system health. They'll love to take them, and that makes mornings easier. When back to school gets real, Ollie helps you deal. Find these and more at ollie.com or retailers nationwide. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
This is Marshawn Lynch. But on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. So I'm here to make sure you don't miss any of the action this football season. With Prize Picks, it's good to be right. With millions of members and billions of dollars awarded and winnings, Prize Picks is the best place to put your takes to the test. The app is really simple to use and available in 40-plus states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Just pick two or more players across any sport. Pick more or less on their projections, and if you're right, you can cash in. With simple stats and fan-friendly policies, Prize Picks is the best place to make your picks. Most importantly, they don't play about your paper. All transactions on the apps are fast, safe, and secure.
Download the Prize Picks app today and use code SPOTIFY to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code SPOTIFY to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Emily.
And this is A Trial by Podcast. All right, guys, we are back. And we actually just finished recording part 5, I think it was. And so part 5 came out the same day as True Crime Trivia Night, so we have not lived it yet. But by the time you're hearing this, it has already happened, and I already know we had the best time. And I know that if listeners showed up, I cried tears of joy. So if whoever was there, thank you so much for coming. We will, I'm sure, do some shout outs after we live the experience and record. Okay.
Oh, hell yeah.
But with that being said, I don't think we have much biz nasty to cover. We just want to finish the story because I am unwell at this point of 5 weeks.
It's been the deepest dive.
It has been the deepest dive. And it's like every time I like review my thing, I come up with a new question. Then I look for the answer to that question. Then I find more information. I'm like, shit, where do I put this? And so I apologize because I know this series has been maybe a little bit more redundant than necessary. So I apologize for that, but I'm just trying to make sure I don't miss anything that I feel is important. So where we left off last week, we went through a lot of the witnesses, the testimonies, the physical evidence presented at trial. And this is, of course, the first trial of Amanda and Raffaele. And for a while during this trial, actually, Amanda and Raffaele were feeling pretty hopeful. They felt like the prosecution story was not adding up. And to them, the physical evidence just wasn't there. Despite this, though, their hopes were crushed on December 5th, 2009, when they were both found guilty on all charges. Now, they are found guilty December 5th, 2009. They are imprisoned about a week after Meredith's body is found, which is November 2nd, 2007. So they have been in prison now for over 2 years by the time that they are convicted.
That's crazy.
Now, Amanda was sentenced to 26 years in prison and Raffaele was sentenced to 25. The reason Amanda had an extra year was for the slander charge against Patrick. Remember, they were convicted for sexual assault, murder, simulating a robbery, theft, and illegally carrying a knife. So they are looking at spending more. Like Amanda Knox at this point, I believe, is 22 when she's sentenced. And she is sentenced to 26 years in prison, longer than she's been alive. So this is obviously devastating to them, whether they're guilty or not. But yeah, that's
Wait, so how long was Rudy Guede sentenced for before he appealed?
30 years. And then he appealed and it was shortened to 16 years.
Okay.
I cannot fucking believe that his DNA is all over the scene. It's found inside of her. And they shortened his sentence by 14 years.
Yeah,
for this isn't like, oh, he got in a fight and he snapped and stabbed somebody. Mm-hmm. This isn't like a robbery. I mean, you could say, I guess maybe it is robbery.
He did this before. And now he's going back to prison, didn't you say? Because he was, one of his ex-girlfriends came out and said...
for sexual assault.
Yeah.
But he didn't kill anybody. Not that we know of. He hasn't killed anyone else. Jeez. But this is like... You're a fucking monster of a human being.
Right.
This isn't just, oh, you have a really bad anger issue and you've snapped in the moment.
Keep this man off the streets.
You are a scary fucking evil human being type shit. Now, the prosecution, the Kercher family, and most of Italy celebrated this victory. And you know what? I want to take the Kercher family out of that. I don't think they celebrated this victory. John Kercher, Meredith's dad, talks about in his book how he was not elated. He wasn't overjoyed by what happened here. Mm-hmm. He describes how he felt nothing. So while the prosecution and most of Italy is celebrating, the American media was reporting on it pretty much from the opposite perspective. They are reporting on it as a complete miscarriage of justice. Even some Italian news outlets, like more serious ones, were publicly questioning some of the physical evidence. They're questioning that DNA on the knife. They're questioning these things, and they're saying, okay, without these things that we think are not reliable pieces of evidence, is there enough evidence here? That is starting in a small subset of, Italian media. But despite this, the tabloids just ran wild with headlines about Foxy Knoxy being found guilty. And as soon as they could, Amanda and Raffaele filed for an appeal. However, they would spend 11 more months in prison before they could officially get this appeal. So, yeah.
Do you think they dragged this out on purpose, or is that just
I get the impression this is standard.
Yeah.
And I don't know that for certain, but when I was reading about the people that Mignini had charged, those 20 people he had charged for the Monster of Florence stuff and Dr. Narducci, they said it took them about 4 years to be exonerated as well. And that's what happens with Amanda and Raffaele. Mm-hmm. So, obviously the process is similar, the trial, the appeal, the trial, the appeal. So I think it sounds like it's normal for there to be almost a year in between the steps of the justice system, which is...
That sucks if you're innocent. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but a lot of people don't have to be, they're not imprisoned until they're convicted. Mm-hmm. The reason that Amanda and Raffaele were is because they were considered a risk of some sort. It's like here, if you are about to go on trial for murder, some people can get bail and some are, they're not offered
no bail. Yeah.
And it just depends on the circumstances and the judge has to decide.
Yeah,
I don't think the people, those 20 people in the Monster of Florence case, I don't believe that they were imprisoned that whole time.
Interesting.
They were maybe for parts of it, but then they were released in between.
Okay.
Now, as for Meredith's family, I'd like to read some quotes from her father's book about how they all felt about the conviction. So he writes, quote, "Our family was still seated by the entrance door when Amanda Knox was led from the court, held by police. She was crying and crumpled, and even though I was feeling that justice had been done, it was not a pleasant sight. I did not feel any elation. Even now, I cannot put into words exactly what I felt. For more than 2 years now, I had wondered what my reaction was going to be to this moment, but in fact, I did not seem to have any reaction at all. For me, there was only a deep and unsettling numbness, as if I was far away," end quote. Now, at a press conference right after the verdict was delivered, Meredith's brother Lyle told the media, quote, Ultimately, we are pleased with the decision and that we got a decision. But at the end of the day, it's not time for triumph or celebration. We are satisfied. But we are gathered here because our sister was murdered and brutally taken away from us. And all of our lives and everyone who knew her and people around the world who didn't have been touched by it. But 2 young people have been sentenced to a long time behind bars. And the other gentleman was a year ago, end quote. So basically, they're saying, we think justice has been done here. The court system did its job. They believe that they did it properly, but they're not celebrating these people going to prison for decades, which is they are very, very good people, because I don't think I would be dropping F-bombs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this whole family is very
Cool, calm, and collected.
Very collected, very reasonable, even though they're living through very unreasonable circumstances, which is very incredible, because as someone who is usually unreasonable in reasonable circumstances, I'm very impressed with them. And I think they are looking at this very fairly. Like, we talked about last week, he writes about in the book, I don't want people who are innocent to be going to prison for this. I want to know the truth. But I don't know the truth. I am trusting the justice system to figure out the truth for me, basically, which is interesting. Now, her sister Stephanie wrote, quote, "People always ask us about Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito, but it's not our place to judge them. That's what the judges and jury were there for. We can only go on the evidence that we heard and what we've been told about their behavior and what they did," end quote. And that just goes to what I was just saying, is they're saying, it is not our job to decide if Amanda and Raffaele are guilty or innocent. And I actually think that's a really good outlook to take, just being reasonable, but also for your emotional well-being of, I need to just let the court system do their job, because they can't do it. Like, they do not have the power to figure this out. This is the court system's job. So I think letting go of that control that you do not have, I think would be a very, very difficult thing to do, but I think in the end would probably be better off for your mental well-being.
Yeah.
Of course, I've never been in a situation like this, so I could be completely wrong about that. But now, finally, Meredith's mother, Arlene, explained, quote, "We are the ones who have been given a life sentence. We have to live with what's happened for the rest of our lives. People say that time heals, but it doesn't," end quote, which is heartbreaking. And especially if you believe that, well, I think everyone agrees that Rudy's guilty. And just know that you have lost your daughter forever. She is never coming back. And he, 16 years later, right now, he's just out and about. He might be being held for that sexual assault charge, I would assume.
I hope so.
But, he was out and about. She's right. They are the ones that are dealing with the consequences of this for the rest of their lives. And I think that's unfair.
Yeah.
Like, in a brutal murder like this, where someone goes into someone's home where they're supposed to be safe and unprompted rapes and murders them, don't ever let them out, in my opinion.
Yeah, same.
In my opinion, don't ever let them out. And again, you could say the same thing about Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito. Like, if you believe that they actively participated in this, you're probably thinking the same thing.
Yeah,
how are they out?
They a threat to society.
Then, we talk about they served 4 years in prison. Well, if you think they're innocent, that seems like a long time. But if you think they're guilty, then they only served 4 years in prison, And it's just horrific for this family. So they appeal this verdict. They have to do something there's a hearing of some sort in order to be granted this appeal. It's not like a full trial, but they have to go in and present evidence to the appellate court to show that they have valid reasoning to be granted an appeal. And if the appeal is granted, I believe there are different things that can happen. It could be possibly a reduced sentence, or it could be another trial. That is to my understanding. Again, I feel very wishy-washy about the details of how this justice system works. It was very confusing to me. Now, the defense argued during this appellate process that the prosecution's evidence handling was basically just completely fucked. I kind of explained to you already why. Yeah. And this is one of the main things that they focus on. And they say that some of this evidence should have been thrown out. Therefore, they did not get a fair trial. So what they were asking for is they wanted an independent review of the DNA findings. And if this independent review came back with different conclusions than the prosecution's original review of the DNA evidence, then they said that is grounds for a new trial. That's their main argument, is that this physical evidence was presented improperly to the panel of judges.
Okay.
Now, here's a side note, is that they had actually asked for this during the first trial. They had filed a motion for an independent review of this evidence, but their motion was denied by the judge. However, this new judge, which is Judge Claudio Pratillo Hellman, granted the request. So he says, all right, you can test it. Now, this is not the defense team's experts testing this DNA. This DNA is being tested by 2 independent DNA experts who were requested by the appellate court. I cannot be certain about this, but I believe the purpose is these people work for the court and they don't work for either side. Like they, obviously they're a little bit closer to the prosecution, but they're supposed to be a neutral party.
Okay.
Are they actually a neutral party? I don't know. Like I don't know, if this leads to issues.
If Menini has anything to say about it?
Well, I don't know. But to me, it sounds like they're not, like in the US, a lot of the times you would have people hired by the defense to like test this stuff, which then you're going to say they're not a neutral party either. So they retest the key forensic evidence. And in July of 2011, they delivered a highly critical 145-page report undermining the original DNA evidence. So they found numerous errors in evidence collection and analysis. So, we talked about that crime scene video. They literally were videotaping themselves improperly collecting evidence. They also found no reliable trace of Meredith Kercher's DNA on the murder weapon, on this knife that the prosecution in the first trial, they called it their smoking gun against Raffaele and Amanda. And they are unable to find her DNA on this knife. They also said that the DNA sample that was originally found, because remember, when you're testing DNA, you're using it up. They said that this DNA sample was too low in quantity and was more likely from contamination. Okay. They also report that the bra clasp's DNA profile could have been muddled by contamination because it had been lost on the floor for 46 motherfucking days, and it showed the DNA of multiple people. And that's almost the bigger point here. Yes, it was lost on the floor for 46 days, but the fact that it had 2 unidentified male profiles, which I assume they tested against multiple people. Like I know that they tested that against Giacomo Solensi. Who is this DNA coming from? I would imagine that they would ask most people who've been in the home to test their DNA against it. So the fact that they can't find whose DNA this belongs to, these independent experts hired say that it is hard to then attribute Sollecito's DNA to being a part of the murder. Because then are you going to say that these other 2 unidentified males also participated in the murder?
Yeah.
Because where are they?
Exactly.
And who are they? And if they didn't participate in the murder, how did their DNA get on the bra clasp?
A lot of questions.
And if their DNA got on the bra clasp in some innocent way that had nothing to do with the murder, then who's to say Sollecito's DNA didn't get on the bra clasp in the same exact way?
Yeah.
So these findings echo concerns of many experts worldwide because this was huge in the media, especially in the American media. A lot of experts saying that these 2 pieces of DNA were completely overstated by the prosecution and the prosecution's experts in the first trial. And in many people's expert opinion, and I don't have a ratio for you, they say that it might have been corrupted. So this 145-page review was a huge turning point in the appeal. And this boosted the defense's case that the forensic evidence was, quote, unreliable and possibly contaminated. Now, the defense also hires their own expert to examine the bloody footprint on the bath mat because this is an actual like testing that needs to be done. They are comparing Raffaele's footprint to the photo of this to Rudy's footprint. And it's important to note, they have the measurements and everything of this footprint. So now they hire an expert. This is why they don't need an independent court-hired consultant to do this, is because it's not actual testing. So they get these experts, and these experts argue the opposite of what was presented in the first trial. They say that the footprint found on the bath mat is more likely Rudy Guede's than Raffaele Sollecito's, because even though Rudy's foot was a little bit longer than Raffaele's, the key 4-foot measurements, which, like the front of the foot, the area where the print was made, they align closely with his foot and not with Raffaele's. This is really hard for me to explain to you guys in just an audio format, but we have a picture that we posted last week. So I posted it last week as a spoiler. I'm not realizing, but whatever. Where you can see this footprint on the bath mat next to Raffaele's with the measurements of like how long this toe is, how long like the sole of the foot is, and all of these things. And you can see that these measurements are correct because there's rulers laying next to them. To me, and again, I have a bias. You guys know what I think about this case. When you look at this toe that you see in the print is like long. It's like a long, big toe. And when you look at Rudy Guede's footprint, he has this long, big toe. When you look at Raffaele Sollecito's, he has this little fucking
short, stubby,
chody mushroom big toe. It is like short and stubby. And to me, from looking at those side by side, I think it looks more like Rudy's. Again, it is impossible to say whose footprint this is definitively because there's no, you can't see the whatever lines in your foot. But I want you guys to look at this photo, even follow us on Instagram if you can at A Trial by Podcast. But even if you don't want to for some reason, you don't have Instagram or Facebook, you can look this up online. I found it on the website injusticeinperugia.org, and you'll have to like find the link that says like the footprint evidence. Look at this. And I want to know what you guys think because again, maybe it's my bias, but they literally measure it and their measurements show that the length and width of that region of the foot did not match Raffaele's measurements. And they say that this dimensional consistency strongly points to Rudy as the source of the footprint, undermining the prosecution's attempt to tie it to Raffaele.
Oh, wouldn't you know? Yet again.
When I look at this is very compelling evidence to me that makes me believe that this is not Raffaele's footprint. For me, it's in the toe. I see it in the toe.
This is a real good story about Bronx and his dad, Ryan, real United Airlines customers.
We were returning home, and one of the flight attendants asked Bronx if he wanted to see the flight deck and meet Captain Andrew.
I got to sit in the driver's seat.
I grew up in an aviation family, and seeing Bronx kind of reminded me of myself when I was that age.
That's Andrew, a real United pilot.
These small interactions can shape a kid's future.
It felt like I was the captain.
Allowing my son to see the flight deck will stick with us forever.
That's how good leads the way.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
But again, I'm not an expert. I want to know what you guys think. I'm going to send Emily the photo right now so I can hear what you think. So on the left is Rudy Guede's footprint. And then on the right, you'll see the side-by-side of the bloody print and Raffaele's foot. Do you see what I'm saying about his toe is almost in the shape of like a triangle.
Oh, yeah.
And do you see how like...
It's like way wider too. Like, oh, man. I don't know, man.
But like,
it is hard to see though. Like the bloody footprint is like very hard to compare the two, but...
Right, and you have to think that bloody footprint is probably not the whole footprint because it's only going to be printed where there's blood on his foot and where he applies pressure.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be the same as like a full footprint that they make in ink. But like, dude, to me, are you seeing what I'm saying about the big toe?
Yeah, I can see it.
And here's the thing is like, you probably can't see it in the picture I sent you, but like, you can find on that website, it's actually, I have the link right here. It's injusticeinperugia.org/footprints-03. Go look at this, guys. They have the actual measurements, like how many millimeters wide the toes are, how many millimeters long, like, and the same thing for the sole of the foot. I find it compelling. And even if you think it's not Rudy's for some reason, looking at this, which it might not be, to me, it's like, you can't fucking tell. For sure.
Oh, yeah, no, I was like, I have no idea, but like, it's definitely a foot.
Yeah. But anyway, interesting stuff. Like, my point is here, all of the physical evidence has a lot of reasonable doubt. A lot. Not like a little bit.
Yeah. Like,
a lot.
Yeah.
A boatload. A boatload of reasonable doubt. Now, prosecutors are, of course, alarmed by these independent reviews, and they requested to introduce new DNA tests in an attempt to salvage their case. But Judge Hellman denied any further testing. He's like, you guys tested it once. We had an independent review that said something different. We're done testing all this stuff. And so he ruled that the expert review was thorough and that additional tests would be superfluous. This is like a major blow to the prosecution because you just cut out their smoking guns. They're like the biggest pieces of their evidence. And with that decision, the evidentiary phase ended of this appeal hearing and closing arguments began. But media coverage at this point is intense because I think the media is starting to catch wind of maybe this conviction wasn't as solid as people thought. Now, the Kercher family publicly urged the court to consider all of the evidence, not just the DNA evidence. And they lamented that the media frenzy surrounding the case was influencing everything that was going on. Now, while all of this is happening, Mignini and another officer were convicted of abuse of office in relation to their investigation into Dr. Narducci's death.
The Italian criminal justice system is in shambles right now. What is going on with them?
This is just a crazy thing that this guy's like actively, I assume he's active in the second trial and he's prosecuting while he's being prosecuted. I'm like, where do you find the time, my guy? Where do you find the time? So Mignini was also implicated in a broader set of allegations, including forging audio evidence and illegal wiretapping and abuse of office in separate cases, not related to the Meredith Kercher case. And he was notably, basically, he's convicted of one of these allegations, which is the wiretapping of a journalist that he thought was a Satanist, apparently. But there were also allegations against him that he was forging audio evidence and wiretapping other prosecutors.
Oh,
which
well, that's
I don't know why. I believe it's because he thought that they were involved in this like satanic cult. But I do not know that for sure.
What is this guy's fetish with satanic cults?
I really want to cover this case. I'm not going to do it for a long time, though, because I'm sick of Mignini. But we will cover this case because a lot of what I read is very confusing to me. And it's like one of those things I feel like you can't really understand the big picture until you know all of the details. So I'm doing my best to describe it here, but we will cover it in detail one day. So in 2010, while Amanda and Raffaele are on trial, Mignini is convicted and he's given a 16-month suspended sentence, which means that he doesn't have to go to jail. I don't understand suspended sentences. I'm going to ask our legal expert friends about this because I just saw that someone in the U.S. was given a suspended sentence for literally molesting a child for 5 years, a BYU baseball player. And I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name right now, but I think this is probably going to be the next case that we cover. So don't worry, I'll get you the details. But he got a suspended sentence, so he doesn't have to go to prison, apparently. And this is what happened to Mignini. He gets this 16-month suspended sentence. He doesn't have to go to jail. Then he appeals this decision, and in 2011, this sentencing was annulled. So they basically just took it back. The Supreme Court then mandated a transfer of the case to Turin, like to a different area, so he's not being tried in the area where he worked in, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And in 2016, the case was ultimately dropped due to the statute of limitations. So I think in earlier episodes, I said that he was convicted. He was convicted, but that conviction was overturned.
They said uno reverse.
Which I did not realize until I researched his trial. So sorry for being misleading. I did not mean to be. Now, on October 3rd, 2011, this is when the appellate court is announcing their decision. And their decision was that basically their convictions had been overturned. The second trial has not started. This is the appellate court's decision. And now, because the appellate court overturned their convictions, they are then going to be tried again. I made that so confusing. I am so sorry. But that was the appellate court hearing. They are going to go back to trial. Basically, they are not convicted now. They have overturned their convictions, but the prosecution is going to try them again.
Okay.
Do you see why I'm getting so confused with this stuff, though?
Yeah.
Like, this is so confusing when you don't know anything about how this system works.
It is.
And I'm sure, like, if Italian people are listening...
because it's completely different in the U.S.
Yes.
Like, that's why I think it's confusing.
Yes. So I am so sorry. I made that so confusing. I confused myself, okay? So here's the thing. The appellate court, they overturned their convictions, and after nearly 4 years behind bars, 24-year-old Amanda Knox and 27-year-old Raffaele Sollecito are immediately released. And the courtroom erupted as Amanda, in tears, heard the words "not guilty." And that evening, Amanda flew straight home to Seattle. She was like, "Get me the fuck out of
bye
here."
guys.
And I do not blame her.
Yeah.
Now, Raffaele, of course, remained in Italy, though he did go back to Bari and like lived with his family. He left Perugia. And what's interesting is he actually, while he was in prison, got his master's degree, which is crazy.
That's what I was going to ask, because like he had some stuff going for him. You know, he was busy working on his master's, and like then he got cut off because he was in prison.
And like at the end of his master's, he had to have like the professor or something like came to the prison so he could give, I don't know, some like he had to do something in person where he couldn't just like write a report or something. So I'm like, that is crazy. I don't know if that's normal or if that was like a special thing that they let him do.
That's crazy.
But yeah, I think that's crazy.
Honestly,
I do think that they
good for him though.
Yeah, I do think that they do let prisoners. I don't know if they do it for college though. I feel like I know that they do like GED classes for people who don't have high school diplomas in the United States. But
that you could get a full degree.
Yeah,
in
I don't
prison.
know.
I knew you could take like certain courses, but
I'm not sure that you can. That's what I'm just wondering. Is this a normal thing in Italy that they let you do that? Or is that like, did he get special treatment? That's interesting. So they're no longer considered convicted. And I think at this point, the prosecution gets to decide if they want to pursue a second trial or not. Now, in the court's official written motivation report, Judge Hellman cited, quote, "a material non-existence," end quote, "of evidence tying Knox or Sollecito to the crime." The report noted that forensic proof was insufficient, and the independent experts found no credible DNA link, and that there was no believable motive or conspiracy. There was no phone records, messages, or history connecting the pair to Rudy Guede. There's no history or phone records or evidence of them planning the murder or talking about cleaning it up after. The judges also dismissed key prosecution witnesses. For instance, that Antonio guy who said that he saw Amanda and Raffaele in a nearby piazza that night. And he basically said that like this witness was unreliable because he was a heroin addict and that testimony shouldn't be a part of the decision of innocence or guilt. Okay. Now, the court further observed that Knox's early statements during a marathon overnight police interrogation when she accused Patrick Lumumba resulted from a confused and stressed state because she's being interviewed in a foreign language for hours under pressure overnight, and that this should not have been taken as evidence of guilt. Notably, the court points out that it was Amanda herself who first raised the alarm about something being wrong in the house, calling both Meredith's phone and then the police. And these are actions inconsistent with an attempt to cover up the crime. This is what this judge's report says. The only conviction upheld against Knox was the one for like slander or defamation for her accusation against Patrick Lumumba. And for that, her 3-year sentence remained. But since she had already served 4 years, she owed no further prison time. So everything was overturned except for that one conviction against Amanda.
Okay.
Now, this acquittal, of course, attracted worldwide media coverage on a scale even greater than the original verdict. In Italy, the reactions were mixed. Some saw the decision as a humiliation for the Perugian prosecutors, while others worried that Meredith Kercher had been forgotten and that her killers were getting away with what they did to her. Prominent Italian newspapers acknowledged the ruling, with La Stampa calling it, quote, "a bitter pill for Italy to swallow," end quote, and urging reflection on the, quote, "holes and contradictions," end quote, in the case and in the Italian justice system. The Kercher family, while respecting the court's decision, said that they were left with deep questions about who had actually killed Meredith, and they vowed to continue seeking answers. British media focused on the Kercher's plight. Tabloids ran headlines like, quote, "Foxy's free, Meredith family agony as Amanda cleared." And then they're basically just trying to emphasize the family's anguish to point at Amanda and Raffaele as being like, they got away with murder. And of course, they're talking about Meredith as the forgotten victim, which I think rightfully so.
Right.
And they're talking about how much she was lost in the Knox media circus, which is true, but which they fucking actively led. Like the British tabloid press, especially. Not all of the British media, but the tabloids. Like, they're talking about how fucked up the media coverage was, but they were like some of the ones that were doing it. So anyway, Now, in the US, there was an outpouring of support for Amanda Knox. American press and public opinion largely viewed her as an innocent woman who had been wrongfully imprisoned, and they portrayed her as a victim of a bungled investigation and of overzealous prosecution. And here's the thing. To me, whether or not you think Amanda Knox is a victim of those things, I think those things were present. Even if you believe she's guilty, I feel like I would be looking at it like, well, the reason she got away with it is because the bungled investigation and the overzealous prosecution who tried this whole case on things that didn't make any sense. I don't know. Maybe that's not how those people look at it, but I just think it's, I don't know. Like, I feel like it's a fact that this investigation was fucked up and the prosecution was
100%.
But I guess that's my opinion that it's a fact. Right? Allegedly. So the Seattle Times, for example, wrote that the case against Knox had always been far-fetched and unsupported. Upon landing in Seattle, as soon as she got back from the appellate court overturning whatever, she was greeted by a huge crowd of journalists at the airport. And she gave a very brief but emotional statement thanking those who had believed in her, while her lawyers cautioned that the legal process was not over if prosecutors chose to appeal further. So you're like, oh my God, they're free. It's all over, right? Wrong. You're mistaken, because even though the convictions were thrown out, the prosecutors had two options. They could leave it be, or they could file an appeal to the overturning. And if they win that appeal, they get to retry Amanda and Raffaele. And of course, they choose the latter option. And in March of 2013, Italy's Supreme Court annulled the 2011 acquittals. So this means that the prosecution won this appeal, and now they are going to get to retry Amanda and Raffaele.
So they have to fly back? They have to come back to Perugia?
Well, Amanda Knox basically was like, you're going to have to drag me back kicking and fucking screaming.
Oh, shit.
And she did not go. She did not attend this second trial. And here's the thing. You have to remember, they have to go through like a hearing process in order to win this appeal before they can do that. So the Supreme Court has a 5-judge panel, and they're the ones that make this decision. And they have to have a reason for why they're going to overturn the overturning of the original conviction. And they said that they found that the Perugia appellate court, that their acquittal had been marred by, quote, numerous deficiencies, contradictions, and manifest lack of logic, end quote. The back and forth is like, dude, my brain hurts.
Literally. I'm like, I cannot keep up.
Emily, this is just when I'm telling it to you, imagine me trying to figure this out.
Oh my God.
Do you guys see why I've been losing my mind? And that's why I think in part 4, I told you guys, I'm like, I am so sure there are some mistakes in here. Like, whether it's like when something is presented, maybe it wasn't at the first trial and it was at the second trial, or it wasn't in the second trial, it was in the appellate court hearings. I really did my best. I would never try and like mislead anything, but like this was so confusing. It was so confusing. So I don't think there's any mistakes about like the interpretation of the evidence, but I might be mistaken on some of the timing and the which trial and whatever. So the Supreme Court ruling did not declare that Amanda and Raffaele were guilty. Instead, it basically just faulted the Hellman court for legal errors. And most notably, it criticized the appeal judges for exceeding their mandate by completely discrediting the DNA evidence without ordering new tests, and for allegedly undervaluing circumstantial clues, such as Amanda's false accusation of Patrick, which the Supreme Court viewed as potentially incriminating context. The judges also pointed to a note that Amanda wrote while in police custody. Now, this note is actually the one I would call her recanting her statement, even though she doesn't really fully recant her statement. She's just kind of saying like she didn't really know what was true. And in part of that statement, she wondered if she had been at the cottage during the murder. And they looked at this as an indication that she might have been present, suggesting that the prior court by ignoring this element. So this decision completely reopened the case. They are pretty much back at square one, like as if the pretrial had just ended. We have now decided that they are going back to trial.
I don't understand how they're like, yeah, we have enough to try them again and win, because that's not why they lost the first time. It's because they didn't have any evidence
but they didn't lose
against her.
They didn't lose the first time. They won the first time, and then they lost. And now they won this appeal, and it's so confusing.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm not dogging the Italian justice system. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I have no idea. I'm just saying for someone who did not grow up learning about this, this is very confusing to me, okay? Now, so of course, this decision reopens the case. It raised the possibility of an extradition battle because the U.S. and Italy have an extradition treaty. So if Amanda Knox is found guilty and they want to imprison her, they can
send her.
extradite her. However, I believe that no one has ever been extradited from the U.S. to Italy in the past. Or if they had, I think they said it had been a really long time. Like, they were saying that this would be like a fucking huge deal if they did this. Now, the Kercher family's lawyer praised the ruling, saying that Meredith's family was very happy and satisfied that there would be another trial to get to the truth. And again, I don't blame them. Like, imagine how we're saying this is so confusing for us to understand. Imagine how they're feeling in real time, seeing all of this happen and seeing all of this DNA evidence. Like, all of these experts are saying the opposite thing.
Yeah, they're all contradicting each other.
It's like, what does it all mean? And who is right and who can you trust? And of course, I think they probably are more leaning towards trusting the prosecution, which I completely understand. And I think I would absolutely be doing in their position.
Yeah, same.
And even not in their position. I feel like I lean more towards being trusting of the experts, trusting of the professionals and of the authorities. I cannot imagine how like painful and tormenting all of this was. Like, this is going on for years. Amanda Knox, upon hearing this news of, that they're going back to trial, she basically called it painful, and she condemned the move as baseless, saying, quote, "The prosecution's theory of my involvement has been repeatedly revealed to be completely unfounded and unfair," end quote. Raffaele, still in Italy, maintained that the prior acquittal had been correct, but he once again prepared to defend his innocence. And Amanda talks a lot about like how she was terrified for Raffaele because
he was in Italy.
Yeah,
already.
He's in Italy. Like, there's no extradition battle. Like, if they get convicted, he's going back to prison immediately. Amanda would likely go back to prison, but it would take some time because this is now a international political issue at this point. And the U.S. government does eventually start involving themselves in this a little bit, which is debated whether or not that was appropriate. But the new appellate court retrial opened in Florence this time, since Perugia's court was seen as having been too closely tied to the first appeal. So this is now September 30th, 2013 is when this new trial starts. So this is 6 years, almost 6 years after Meredith died. And the presiding judge was Judge Alessandro Nencini. And again, like I said, Amanda stayed in the U.S. She chose not to return to Italy. But Raffaele, he attended all of the hearings in person. Like, he went in and he showed his face, which I don't know whether or not he had a choice. I'm not sure. Now, over the following months, the Florence court essentially rehearsed the case. I'm not going to go into too much detail because we know the evidence. We know both sides of the story. They are talking about all of the same things, but they're just adding on, little opinions and new testing and stuff like that to it. Now, the prosecution, they revisited forensic evidence and witnesses, largely representing the original theory that Knox and Sollecito, alongside Rudy, had committed the murder. Notably, Judge Nencini granted a prosecution request to perform a new DNA test on a small, previously unexamined sample from the blade of Sollecito's kitchen knife, the alleged murder weapon. So remember, in the appellate court, that Judge Hellman denied this request. So now the prosecution has requested again, and this request is granted. This move came in response to the Supreme Court's critique that the evidence had not been fully retested. And this was one of the reasons that they granted the prosecution's appeal. So when this new test was conducted by the prosecution or by independent people of the court, I believe it was by the prosecution, though, because they asked for it. It might have been by independent people. Either way, they tested it again, and they cannot find her DNA on it. There is no trace of Meredith Kercher's DNA on it. So we have now tested this knife 3 times. The first time, the test was so small it did not meet international standards. And the second 2 times, they cannot find it at all on this knife.
In 1988, a small New Jersey town is shaken by horror. A devoted mother murdered, satanic symbols scattered throughout her home, and her teenage son vanished without a trace. Was this a demonic ritual or a calculated act of evil? Horror master Eli Roth unravels a terrifying truth in Let the Devil In. Now streaming new episodes Sundays exclusively on MGM+. Anyone can follow. It takes something special to be an original, which is why the 2025 Lincoln Navigator SUV arrives with new ways of surrounding you in luxury, including the ultra-wide 48-inch panoramic display and the multi-sensory Lincoln Rejuvenate experience. A true original never stops evolving. So meet the 2025 Navigator, the original that's all new and better than ever. Learn more at Lincoln.com. Lincoln and Navigator are trademarks of Ford or its affiliates.
Hello, Nigel here. As an owl, I love to be awake all night, but allergy sufferers like you probably don't feel the same. So take Xyzal at night to relieve allergies while you sleep. Then wake up fully refreshed for a more productive day. Xyzal works fast and offers 24-hour continuous relief from sneezing, runny nose, itchy watery eyes, and itchy nose and throat, so you can enjoy doing the things you love all day long. Be wise all. Take Xyzal at night. Use as directed. Starts working in 45 minutes.
The #1 selling product of its kind with over 20 years of research and innovation. Botox Cosmetic, onabotulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
And this result once again contradicted the 2007 lab finding that detected a small sample of her DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Now, despite this, prosecutors argued that other evidence and circumstantial facts still implicated the duo. For example, they emphasized that Rudy's final judgment from his separate trial had officially stated that he had accomplices. And he does point to Amanda and Raffaele at trial. And they pointed to the signs of a faked break-in and partial cleanup at the crime scene as evidence of Knox and Sollecito's involvement. And it's like, how can you prove that they're the ones that faked this? You can't. You don't have the physical evidence. They do talk a little bit about how some of those luminol footprints that they say were compatible with Amanda, some of them were in or like right outside Philomena's door. And so they kind of lead that to say like Amanda was the one that like messed up the room. That's not enough for me.
Yeah, no.
Personally.
Same.
Now, the defense continued to insist that the DNA evidence was either absent or contaminated and that Raffaele and Amanda had no motive or history of violence, calling the prosecution's theory a grave miscarriage of justice. As in earlier proceedings, media attention was, of course, intense, and Amanda gave interviews from the U.S. declaring her innocence and calling the renewed accusations a nightmare, while Italian outlets covered each phase of the retrial closely. Then, on January 30th, 2014, after deliberating for 12 hours, the Florence Appellate Court reconvicted Amanda and Raffaele.
That's fucking bonkers.
They are found guilty. They are found guilty at the second trial. Again, after being acquitted, they are found guilty again. And the packed courtroom heard the judges announce that the earlier acquittal had been overturned. Amanda, tried in absentia, was sentenced to 28 and a half years. This is longer than her original sentence, which was 26 years.
The way I would fully fucking crash out if I was Amanda or Raffaele or any of their families over this bullshit, like this whole thing is so insane to me. Like, what is going on?
And I want to like stress to everyone, I told you in the beginning, I was going into this believing they're innocent. I am telling you, I tried so hard to find something that was going to change my mind. Like, I really scoured and there are things, like I've said, first of all, the way Amanda acts, I agree, is very odd. It's very odd. And it is, you're like, that's odd.
Questionable, yeah.
But there are things that I think point to them possibly lying about stuff. The number one thing for me is them saying that they made those calls to police before the postal police got there. That is like, why would you lie about that?
Yeah.
And it's easily provable otherwise. Again, I think there's a very small chance that maybe the postal police were misremembering what time they got there. But I'm pretty sure that they lied about this. And I don't understand why they would if they're innocent. I can't figure that out. And there are certain things about them turning off their phones. Again, I think Amanda turning off her phone, not that suspicious, but Raffaele turning off his phone is weird to me. I don't see the reason for it. Again, I think a 24-year-old's relationship with their flip phone in 2007 is different than my relationship with my iPhone and my screen time. I can't even tell you guys. It's embarrassing. But I still think it's weird. If you guys have any other information that I have missed that you think is big, that is a mind changer, I want to know. Because again, I just am like shocked at the way that this goes down. I really am. And we're going to get to opinions at the end. Not because I feel like 1,000% sure there's no way that they know more than they're saying or whatever, but because I do not think that there is enough evidence to show that they participated in the sexual assault and murder of Meredith Kercher.
Right. And for it to be overturned and then re-prosecuted, no.
Do I know for certain in my mind that they didn't? No, there's no way for me to know that. But there is so much reasonable doubt that I cannot believe that they're even, like the first one, I kind of get it because the evidence wasn't refuted as well and they were limited on the testing. But like, it's shocking to me from what I've read, the information that I have, that they are getting reconvicted of this. I find it shocking. And so if I'm missing anything, let me know, because I want you guys to know I really tried hard to find evidence against my bias. But the evidence I did find against my bias, I found kind of reasonable explanations for, I felt like.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You guys tell me. Now, all right, guys, future Kelsey hopping in here real quick. And I think I'm going to hop in here a couple times this episode. But in regards to the postal police and the time frames that I think we talked about last time in part 5, basically saying that it didn't really make sense because Amanda and Raffaele said they called the police first and then the postal police showed up, and the prosecution said the opposite. And that was according to records. And so we were like, that's the one thing that's really, really suspicious to us. Well, I found something new, guys. So I'm going to call Emily so she can be in on it with us. And this bitch better pick up.
Hello?
Hey, it's me. It's future Kelsey here. I've got you on a hot mic right now.
Uh-oh.
I found something that we have to add. So I was like, it's going to take me 5 minutes. It's going to be a 5-minute conversation. Okay, you ready?
Okay.
All right, so you remember how in part 5 and part 6, we're talking about how the timeline didn't add up when Amanda and Raffaele called the postal police, or called the Carabinieri, because they say that they called the Carabinieri, then the postal police showed up. But according to the phone records, the postal police showed up before they called the Carabinieri. And we were kind of saying, like, that's the one thing that is super sus, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing, is this is explained away very easily. So basically what happened is the postal police just kind of say that they arrived around 12:30, but they found that there's a parking garage across the street from the house, and they can see the postal police arriving on this parking garage camera, okay? And if you look at the timestamps on the parking garage camera, you see them driving by at 12:36, and this is right when the prosecution is trying to say that they got there. Then you can see that at 12:48 is when you see the two postal police crossing the street, I believe from the neighbor's house, to go over to where Amanda and Raffaele are, to Amanda's house, to check on the phones, okay? And so here's the thing is, the reason the prosecution said that they got there at 12:35-ish is because they said that the timestamp on this security camera in the parking garage was 10 to 12 minutes fast. Meaning, if it says 12:48, it's probably around 12:36 or 12:38, okay?
Yeah.
Which, again, that's what we talked about last time, and that's what we talked about again in part 6. So the clock, or the timestamp on the garage camera, was actually 10 to 12 minutes slow, not fast. Meaning, if it says 12:48, it's really 12:58 or even almost 1 o'clock. And the reason that they know this is because they examined the arrival time of the Carabinieri, and they arrived to the cottage after the postal police. Now, cell phone records from conversations leading to their arrival proves that the clock was slow because they were on the phone asking for directions in order to get to the cottage, in order to get to Amanda and Meredith's house. And those cell phone records, when they would have been arriving, and when you see them arriving past that camera, you can see that that does not line up with the clock on the camera. I'm making this really, really confusing. But basically, the whole theory relies on a major timing error. So the clock wasn't actually 10 to 12 minutes fast, like the prosecution said. It was 10 to 12 minutes slow, meaning that they did call the fucking Carabinieri before the postal police got there.
Damn.
And there's CCTV footage that shows all of this. Yes.
Yeah. Damn. Well.
So that was like the one thing, right? That we were all.
Another thing that was explained away. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Emily and I kind of we discussed that little piece in part. And then I'm going to insert our final thoughts and feelings at the end because remember, the rest of this episode that we've recorded, we did not have this information that I just inserted in. So I apologize. It's a little bit rocky and confusing that way, but I'm going to insert our final thoughts at the end because I just asked her for final thoughts as well. So she gets a longer sentence. Raffaele gets the same sentence that he got the first time, which was 25 years in prison. Now, in their written motivation, like the court's written motivation explaining why they made this decision, this is released in April 2014.
And I can't wait to hear this shit.
The Nencini court outlines a scenario similar to the original trial and heavily referenced Rudy Guede's established culpability, arguing that it was unlikely that Guede had acted alone. And I want to pause on the court's report because we talked about last time that, or in part 4, that Meredith Kercher's father wrote from the beginning, they did not believe that one person could have overpowered or could have done this to Meredith. They truly believe that it had to be multiple people because Meredith knew how to defend herself. Mm-hmm. And this is part of the court's theory is they do basically like recreations of the crime saying what must have happened and like what position Meredith must have been in when she was stabbed. And they were saying it's impossible that one person could have done this. That was like a main part of their theory is that they were trying to say that the physical evidence showed that it was impossible for one person to do this. I didn't even mention that because, in my opinion, it doesn't. Mm-hmm. The defense immediately is able to like argue.
Refute that.
Yeah. And then when they're questioning the prosecution's experts about like, well, is it possible that she wasn't in this position and she was actually in this one? They're like, yeah, it's possible. So
well, there you go.
It's like they did that to make it clear, like to just have another thing against Amanda and Raffaele. So I hate to ever go against like what the family believes about their loved one who is the victim who lost their life. Like that breaks my heart. I just would feel wrong in my soul if I told you I didn't believe that Rudy Guede could overpower Meredith by himself. I just think that a grown man versus a grown woman is, I think, unless that woman is like our friend Hannah, who's the buffest chick you've ever met, I think 9 times out of 10, a grown man is going to be able to overpower a grown woman. Mm-hmm. And Rudy Guede is not a big guy. He's a smaller guy. Like, it's not like he's some 6, I don't know his height and stuff. Like a 6-foot dude. Like, he's a, probably average height, not super buff or anything. But I do just think it's not impossible that he could have overpowered her by herself. Am I saying I think there's evidence to show for sure it was just one person? No. But I don't think there's a ton of evidence pointing that to multiple people being involved. Anyway. Now, the court also contended that a partial cleanup had taken place, suggesting that Amanda and Raffaele had wiped away their traces of DNA while leaving Guede's behind. Because there was evidence of a cleanup. Like there was sheets and towels underneath Meredith's body that were soaked in blood. And I believe that there was like bleach used somewhere in the house, but I couldn't find where. There was blood that was cleaned up. And so they're saying, well, if this was someone who just broke in, why are they trying to clean up the crime scene?
Yeah.
And so they're saying this is Amanda and Raffaele getting rid of their DNA, their fingerprints, whatever. And they staged the burglary to mislead investigators. And by the way, this burglary, one of their main points is that they say Rudy Guede couldn't have climbed through that second story window. And at first I was like, I didn't really believe that. Like, it's possible because it is like a brick wall.
Mm-hmm.
Then I heard people talking about it who believe that Amanda and Raffaele are guilty. And they're like, there were no marks on the wall and it was so high up. And, you know, this rock was big. Like, it's not a little rock. Like, this is bigger than a softball, I would say. This is a heavy rock. So you're going to climb up, and they are talking about him carrying that rock up, which to me, I don't know that you carry it. I would think you throw it through the window first and then you climb.
Right.
But I don't know for sure. But then I found a picture online of one of the defense people. I don't know if it was an attorney or what. There's a window right underneath Filomena's window that has a cage on the outside. And this is a normal thing in Italy. Like, a lot of windows have like cages on the outside because the shutter's open completely. So it's like a safety feature. And he climbed up that cage and he's standing on the cage and he can reach with his hands into Filomena's window. And if you follow us on Instagram, you saw that picture in the Instagram post from last week. So to me, we know that he broke into another house before and climbed through a second story window. And we can see that a grown man was able to do that at their house. So is this a staged burglary? Possibly. Remember, the glass was found on top of the clothing. But is it impossible for Rudy Guede to get through that window? No. I don't think so. I think it's possible.
Yeah.
Now, they also acknowledged the lack of definitive new evidence against the defendants, but they stated that the totality of the circumstances, like the mixed DNA traces in the bathroom, the odd behavior, the false accusation, and Rudy Guede's statements saying that they were involved, all of these things together convinced them that Raffaele and Amanda were guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. This decision, again, divided public opinion. Meredith's family, who were present for the verdict in Florence, said there was, quote, no cause for celebration, end quote, but they expressed that the outcome was, quote, what we had hoped for. So they have never stated for sure that they think Amanda and Raffaele did this, but they seem to agree with the prosecution when the rulings are in favor of the prosecution. But I really respect how reasonable they are about these things. Now, Amanda from Seattle issued a statement calling the decision frightening and unjust, criticizing the Italian justice system and asserting that the prosecution's theory still lacks concrete proof. And Raffaele, who had left court just before the verdict, was described as crushed by the outcome. Now, because this was an appellate level decision, Amanda and Raffaele remained free pending a final appeal to the Supreme Court. So they have been reconvicted, but the Supreme Court now has to review that conviction, and they will not go to prison until the Supreme Court basically signs off on this conviction. Now, Judge Nencini, however, ordered travel restrictions on Raffaele. So his passport was confiscated, so he couldn't leave Italy while awaiting the final judgment. In fact, only hours after the verdict, police had stopped Raffaele near the Austrian border and seized his documents.
Raffaele.
So while they can't press any charges because he didn't cross the border, it sounds like he was trying to cross the border. And again, some people point to this as like,
that's pretty sus, dude.
That's pretty sus. He's guilty.
I can see how you'd think that.
I don't know. What would you do?
I mean, I would have done what Amanda did and just went back to my country and stayed there. But in Raffaele's case, I don't know. I would have stayed. I probably would have stayed there, but also like been terrified.
Yeah. Yeah. So, not a good look, Raffaele. Not a good look. Amanda, safe in the U.S. for now, vowed not to return to Italy voluntarily, even if the conviction was upheld by the Supreme Court. And this is when she states that she would fight any extradition attempt, saying, quote, I will literally have to be dragged back kicking and screaming into a prison that I don't deserve, end quote. Which, if you're innocent, I think that's a fair statement.
Valid.
Now, the prospect of a protracted extradition battle loomed, though legal experts noted that the U.S. would likely wait for the Italian process to conclude definitively before taking any action to extradite Amanda. Internationally, the media again reacted vigorously. In Britain, some outlets reported satisfaction, saying that justice for Meredith had been restored, while many in the American press continued to rally to Amanda's defense, questioning the evidence and highlighting what they saw as flaws in the Italian courts. The split in public sentiment between those convinced of Amanda and Raffaele's guilt and those believing in their innocence grew sharper during this period and was just amplified by TV specials, interviews, and a memoir that Amanda published in 2013 while the retrial was underway. And this is one of the books that I read for this case. Now, in the final chapter of the saga, we are getting to the end here. Italy's Court of Cassation, which is the Supreme Court, heard Knox and Sollecito's second and ultimate appeal. And in a definitive ruling, the Supreme Court annulled the 2014 convictions and acquitted both defendants once and for all.
It's about fucking time.
So this is March of 2015 that they are finally acquitted. This is like 7.5 years after Meredith's murder. And this is the end of the court process. And the Supreme Court says once and for all, you're not going back to prison. You're done. They said, Menini, you're done. And the High Court declared that the case against Knox and Sollecito was completely unfounded, citing a lack of biological traces and irreparable doubts about the evidence. Unusually, the court went beyond a finding of mere reasonable doubt or like insufficient evidence and outright exonerated them, stating that they had not committed the crime. So they didn't just say, we don't have enough evidence to convict them, there is reasonable doubt here. They said that they did not participate in this crime. Now, this is highly debated of like, how do you know? How is that, like a lot of people say that this is inappropriate, basically. So in September 2015, the Supreme Court released a scathing explanation of its reasoning, and it spoke of glaring errors, and these are quotes, glaring errors, investigative amnesia, and culpable omissions by investigators in previous courts. They are laying into this court system and to like investigative amnesia and culpable omissions tells you that the Supreme Court believes that the prosecutors were overlooking and misinterpreting things on purpose in order to get a conviction. That's my impression of what they're saying.
Empower. Tim collects bobbleheads. A lot of bobbleheads. Baseball bobbleheads. Race car bobbleheads. Little chihuahua bobbleheads. He's got an entire room strictly for bobbleheads. Does he need them? No. Is his wife mad about it? A little. But Tim works with Empower, and he got good at money, so he can be a little bad. Ooh, horse bobblehead. Classy, Tim. Empower. Invest well, live a little. Start today at empower.com.
Leading a business today means constantly adapting. On the Executive Insights podcast, brought to you by AWS, global leaders share how they're making tough calls, testing bold ideas, and putting innovation into practice, generative AI included. If you're looking for real stories behind what's working, this is it. Subscribe to the Executive Insights podcast today, available now on all major podcast platforms.
Whoa! That was a bop! Ooh, let's keep the party going with a claptrap public domain serenade! Happy birthday to you! Let's all loot and shoot! Ba-ba-doo-doo! Borderlands 4! Well, that kind of fell apart toward the end. But you get the idea. Borderlands 4 is out now! Buy it! Buy it, buy it, buy it!
Rated M for mature.
You don't technically need this car. You say that out loud to yourself. You say, I have no space. You say, I'm just looking. Then you click. Then you zoom in on photo number 87 and whisper, oh no. Then you text a friend, the one who always enables you. You say to yourself, this is the last one, knowing it is not. You don't need this car. But maybe, just maybe, this car needs you. Bring a trailer. It's never just a car.
The report criticized authorities for chasing a convoluted and unsubstantiated theory while ignoring basic facts. For example, none of Amanda and Raffaele's DNA was found in the bedroom where Meredith was murdered, except for that one piece of his DNA on the bra clasp that you guys already know.
Shouldn't have been counted anyway.
I'm not going to review it. Now, whereas numerous traces of Rudy Guede were present. And so they're highlighting the fact that what we've been saying, this dichotomy about the amount of evidence against Rudy Guede and the almost complete lack of physical evidence against Amanda and Raffaele. It highlighted how evidence had been mishandled by the investigators. They confirmed that the key DNA findings were likely from contamination and and should have been considered unreliable. And they concluded that there had been absolutely no reliable indication that Amanda or Raffaele were at the scene. Now, of course, I have just summarized a very long report for you, but I don't think I am dramatizing it. This is a scathing report against the prosecution. Scathing. Now, the only remaining conviction was Amanda's slander of Patrick Lumumba, which we kind of talked about. And she had already served this sentence, so she is not going back to prison. And with this final pronouncement, Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito were legally cleared of Meredith Kercher's murder. Amanda, who was then 27 years old, was able to live freely without the specter of extradition. And Sollecito, 31 years old now, which he was 24 when he met Amanda.
That's so crazy.
31 years old now, also walked free, of course, though both expressed that it was a relief, but it was tempered by the knowledge that Meredith's real story remained unsolved. Now, Meredith Kercher's family, while accepting this decision, lamented that no one might ever pay fully for Meredith's death, as Rudy Guede, who had been released in late 2021, continued to maintain that he had never wielded the fatal knife. So they feel like they never got to the truth. Mm-hmm. That's my impression of what the family says. Like I said, I could not find anything of them saying, we think they're guilty or we think they're innocent. But throughout these trials and appeals, they seem to be pleased when the court rules in favor of the prosecution, which makes me think that, they think that Amanda and Raffaele were involved at least to some extent. And to them, the real injustice here was that they still feel like they do not know what happened to their daughter, which I agree. I feel like I don't know that we know the whole story here. A lot of people like to point to, well, obviously it was just Rudy. He just broke in and whatever. But I do think that there are unanswered questions here, which we'll get to in a second. But the nearly 8-year legal odyssey, marked by 2 convictions, 2 acquittals, and 1 retrial, sparked international discussions about Italy's justice system, the handling of forensic evidence, and the powerful role of the media in high-profile trials. As one Italian commentator put it, the case had become a, quote, legal and media spectacle, end quote, that would be analyzed for years to come. The final acquittal in 2015 brought the contentious case to an end, with Italy's highest court emphatically asserting that Amanda and Raffaele were innocent in the murder of Meredith Kercher, nearly 8 years after their arrests. In 2019, the European Court of Human Rights reviewed Amanda's case and ruled that Italy had violated Amanda Knox's rights during her initial interrogations. So if you have some debate about, maybe the way they were interrogated was okay, the European Court of Human Rights says
absolutely
no.
the fuck not.
Okay? Specifically, they say that she had been denied access to a lawyer and denied access to an interpreter while being interrogated under extreme stress. The court ordered Italy to compensate her with a payment of €18,400. Damn. However, they did not overturn the slander conviction, which I believe that Amanda Knox had asked for this review because she was trying to get the slander conviction against Patrick Lumumba overturned, and they said no. But they did say that her rights had been violated.
Okay.
In 2024, that slander conviction was reviewed again after Amanda filed another appeal. But the Court of Cassation, the Supreme Court, upheld the conviction. And Amanda has expressed deep frustration and heartbreak, calling the continued slander conviction a painful injustice that, quote, cements a lie, end quote. I do think there has to be consequences too.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
I can see where she's coming from though. Like, she was like, I was under so much stress and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I mean, part of me is like, there should be consequences. But then when they talked about what the sentence was for that, it was 3 years. Should you go to prison for 3 years? Like, if you are innocent of everything else and whatever, and you falsely confess and you point at someone else, I don't know. 3 years seems like a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think that you're free now.
Leave it away. Leave it alone.
Like, let's just let it go.
Yeah.
Now, Emily and I had already recorded that portion. We've already recorded this entire episode. I am now coming to you from the future to add something like I do 50,000 times. I'm so sorry. But I got an email from one of our listeners, and this email was specifically about Amanda accusing Patrick Lumumba and Patrick Lumumba's imprisonment. And first of all, I found what this person had to say very compelling. And second of all, I really loved this email because I found it to be a masterclass on how to disagree with someone, respectfully, humbly, and with kindness. And I really think that they made good points here. So I'm not going to name this person because I'm literally putting this in like 2 days before this episode comes out. So I don't want to ask them for permission to use their name and then I don't get it in time and whatever. But this is what the email said. It says, "Hello. Firstly, I've been doing a deep dive on the Meredith Kercher murder, and I really appreciate the level of detail you've gone into on this case. I absolutely agree that it's unfortunate that the story has so much to do with Amanda as opposed to Meredith. That, like many of the problems with this whole situation, is because of the international media's devotion to her as the murderer. Meredith and Amanda are both victims. I've never done anything like this before, but I just wanted to humbly share my perspective. I've really taken issue with those that blame Knox for Patrick Lumumba's 2-week imprisonment. She was unjustly pressured into affirming a narrative that the police had already come up with. She did not volunteer his name." Pause quote there. I wholeheartedly believe that statement. If this interview happened like Amanda says it did, and also like Meredith's father says in his book, he says that the police are asking Amanda about Patrick, and then she confirms, yes, it's Patrick. Okay? I believe he got that information from investigators themselves. So I do agree that they had this narrative already prepared before Amanda said Patrick's name. And I think where Emily and I were getting at is, well, you don't say his name. You don't say his name because this man was in prison because of it. And this email's made me rethink a little bit. How realistic is that? How realistic is that? We're telling you, that Amanda was pressured into this confession that we believe is false, that we know at least part of it is false because we know Patrick had nothing to do with this. But we're saying, but also she should have been strong enough to not say his name. And I think that's thinking way too highly of ourselves. Like, we would never succumb to this pressure that was being put on her. And also when we were 20 years old in a foreign country being interviewed in another language. So I really agree with this person. Now I'm going to skip a small part of this because they give like timestamps and stuff that I don't have the mental wherewithal to go fact check this. I believe this person. What they're saying adds up with what I know about the case, but I don't know the exact timestamp. So I'm going to skip that part. But basically they're saying Amanda recanted this confession right away. She tried to fix the mistake that she made by giving Patrick's name, and they would not allow her to do that. She said, "Hey, I don't think what I told you is true." But they still went after Patrick anyway. And then they punished her for saying it. So they continue by saying, quote, "There was a small hearing, which I believe is similar to a bail hearing, where she said again, she only said Patrick's name because the police said Patrick's name. It made no difference. Lumumba had 8 alibis, customers and employees that the Perugian police knew of right away. They're all documented in police reports, and yet they still left that man in jail for 2 weeks. Her tentative, ambiguous, and contradictory confession wouldn't have come close to meeting the standard of probable cause in order to warrant an arrest in the United States. And even if it was commonplace in Perugia that a bad witness and no corroborating evidence be sufficient to imprison a person, he should have been let go after a day. I empathize with what Patrick went through and what he lost. He is another innocent victim in this matter. But my blame lies with the police and Manini. This was their arrogance, their ineptitude, and their unwillingness to show humility and simply say we were wrong. The European Court of Human Rights, which, pause quote, we do mention this in this episode in part 6. I don't know if it's before I'm talking about this now or after, but he says that the European Court of Human Rights has declared that her rights were violated in that interrogation. It is not right that Patrick or anyone else blame her for the consequences of their incompetence and abuse of power, end quote. So that is, I read the majority of the email to you, and I just want to thank this person for this email. I think they seem very knowledgeable about the case. They are polite, they are kind, they are humble, and they're disagreeing with me. And to me, that is how you change someone's mind about something. But I think you guys just heard what Emily and I were saying when we recorded this episode. And I think this person has changed my mind. And they gave me a couple new details, but they didn't give me anything hugely different from what I already knew. What they did is they framed it in a way that changed my perspective. And that's what I think this case is all about. This case is all about your perspective. And we need to be questioning our own perspectives. I agree with this person. I don't believe that Amanda just randomly picked Patrick Lumumba. I believe that the police picked Patrick Lumumba because Amanda had texted him, "Ci vediamo più tardi, I'll see you later." And they then believed that Patrick was the murderer. And they pushed Amanda into pointing at Patrick. And I think what we were saying before really came from, well, you still shouldn't say it. But again, what this person is saying is, this wasn't a normal interrogation. This wasn't a normal conversation. This interrogation violated her rights. And so how can we hold her to what was said, especially when the very next day she tries to take it back? And why didn't they let her take it back? And there were tons of people from the bar saying that they were with Patrick that night, and there was no physical evidence linked to him, but they still didn't let her take it back. They still charged her for it, even though she said that she admitted what she said wasn't true. So I know some people are going to feel differently about this, but I wanted to share that with you guys because I felt like that email really framed this particular issue in this case better than I have framed it myself. So thank you to that person. Okay, back to the original recording. So let's talk about today. Where is it now in 2025? Where is everybody? So in 2020, Amanda Knox got married, and today the couple has 2 children together. She's also written 2 books. The first was titled Waiting to be Heard, and this is all about her experiences in Italy, her interrogations, prison, the trials, etc. The second book, which is called Free: My Search for Meaning, was published just this year in 2025 and is less directly about the case, but more about how this whole ordeal has had a lasting impact on her life. And it kind of explores her identity and just concepts of redemption and resilience. Now, she is also, I mentioned this in part 2, I think, she's an executive producer on the Hulu series that just came out, which is The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox. This new Hulu series about this case is the reason I chose to do this case right now. I started all this before it came out. I did not know that Amanda Knox was an executive producer. And let me tell you, I don't know if I like that. Mm-mm. Obviously, if you think she's guilty, you disagree with all of this. Mm-hmm. If she's innocent, I respect writing books. I respect defending your identity. I understand that this was such a huge case. I don't know that you could just go and get a normal job. Mm-hmm. And she also, I don't think she finished school. Like she wasn't done with school when she went to prison. Yeah. Like this turned her life upside down. I get reclaiming your identity. I get reclaiming your sexual identity because they've slut shamed you like no other. I get writing books about it to tell your side of the story. I get going on podcasts about it. She has her own podcast now. I haven't listened to her podcast, but I get doing those things. And she gets a lot of criticism for like making this her career path. Yeah. I don't know, guys. What the fuck else is she going to do? However, I will say the Hulu series, I've only watched the first episode. I think most of it is out now. I don't know if I'm going to watch the rest. And I am not criticizing anyone who watches this Hulu series, literally at all. I'm just debating if I'm going to watch the rest because to me, even if she's innocent, it's not a documentary. I get doing a documentary like she did for Netflix to clear your name. But to make it purely entertainment, because I know a documentary is also entertainment. I know what we're doing here is also entertainment. I get that. But to make it purely entertainment with actors, I'm on the fence of like, is that too far for me? Yeah. Are you now crossing the line and you're disrespecting Meredith's family who, I don't know for certain how they feel, but I get the impression they think she was involved somehow. Are you now crossing a line? I don't know. What do you guys think? But in 2019, Amanda actually, so we're going back in time now because this Hulu series just came out. But in 2019, guess what Amanda does? She goes back to Italy, which I would not if it were me. Mm-mm. But she goes to participate in a criminal justice conference, and she delivered a keynote speech as part of a panel titled Trial by Media, which, guys, if you don't know, that's the satire of this podcast, is that we are participating in this trial by media, which, again, should absolutely be left out of the legal system in every way, shape, and form. But that's the satire here, is a trial by podcast. Now, more recently, she described forging an unlikely friendship with none other than former prosecutor Giuliano Mignini.
Shut the fuck up.
I haven't heard his side of this. And the way Amanda talks about it is like, oh, I'm going to keep it hush-hush because I don't want to speak for him. But like, we have conversations. Like I'm trying to understand where he was coming from. I'm trying, like, kind of exploring healing and closure. And you just have to hear her talk about this. And you can hear her talk about it. I'm sure you can find interviews on YouTube. I'm sure she talks about it on Dax Shepard's podcast, the one my sister-in-law was listening to. I haven't heard it yet. But I'm sure if you look into any recent interviews with her, that you will find this. Because when she goes to Italy in 2019, she meets up with Mignini in Italy. And the way she talks about it makes it sound like he is understanding that he did some shit wrong.
Yeah.
But she doesn't really give details on it. She's very like coy about the whole thing, which might be because she's being misleadingly coy about it, or it might just be because she's trying to be respectful. I have no fucking idea. But if she is being very honest about this and like she's trying to understand his side and she is innocent, god damn, I would never. If I was innocent, completely innocent, had nothing to do with this, I would go back to Italy and egg his house. Just kidding. I wouldn't, because I'd be scared they're going to put me back in prison. But like, I would never. I think this is odd.
Yeah.
But, or maybe she's just she's matured a lot, which I think is true. I think she has matured since all of this. But here's the thing is, Giuliano Mignini has never outright acknowledged error on this part. You'll see him. He does participate in the Netflix documentary. You have to watch this guy.
Yeah,
you have to watch it. And he talks about, one thing he talks about is like, oh, everyone was so critical of the Italian justice system, especially Americans. And he goes, we were holding full trials while Americans were still drawing on caves. Because like Italy's so much older than the US. I'm like, okay.
What a blow.
I'm like, kind of a moot point, but savage. But so he hasn't acknowledged his error outright, but she says that their connection has offered her personal insight and helped her let go of old resentments. And she basically talks about how she believes that in his mind, he was doing the right thing. He was doing the moral thing. He was trying to get justice for Meredith. And it was like his own personal biases, like, you know, and she doesn't really talk about directly related to religion, but I think it is related to a religion, how that, you know, led him astray basically. And so she's trying to be like forgiving and understanding of his position and understand like what went wrong here, because she's like, I don't think he's just an evil man. I think he's a good person whose good intentions led him to do a bad thing. Or, you know, those are not her words, but that's the sentiment. Again, she's a little bit more forgiving and mature than I am currently in this moment. Again, if she's innocent. But still, even if she's guilty, I think the way he acted throughout this whole investigation and all of these trials was absolutely fucking absurd and should not be allowed, in my opinion.
I also agree.
It's back to school season, and Clorox is donating 2 million disinfecting wipes to classrooms across America. Because back to school means things can get a little bit messy. Just ask second grade teacher Mr. Torres.
Put me and just one Clorox wipe on a team? We can take on crayon smudges, sticky fingerprints on every surface, sneezes on the door handle, juice box explosion by the sink, snack crumbs, and don't even get me started on the bathroom passes.
Clorox disinfecting wipes. Teacher's #1 wipe.
Think about it. Bathroom passes.
Clean feels good. Based on unit sales data.
Mint is still $15 a month for premium wireless. And if you haven't made the switch yet, here are 15 reasons why you should. 1, it's $15 a month. 2, seriously, it's $15 a month. 3, no big contracts. 4, I use it. 5, my mom uses it. Are you playing me off? That's what's happening, right? Okay, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, $15 per month equivalent required. New customer offer first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Getting ready to step into your career era? Set yourself apart with Adobe Creative Cloud Pro for students. Hone your skills with apps like Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, and more. Powered with the latest in creative AI. Students save over 55% so you can build a portfolio you're proud of. Launch your future with Adobe Creative Cloud Pro for students. Visit adobe.com/students to learn more.
Breathe deep.
Imagine your legs more limber in Duluth Trading Double Flex Denim. Envision euphorically squatting for that can of suds, bending for your toolbox in a state of bliss, lunging for your laser level on a whole new level. Relax and allow the flex to fill you with ability. Find your inner flex in Double Flex Denim only at Duluth Trading.
Now, today, Knox remains a vocal advocate for wrongfully convicted individuals, and she does a lot of speaking at events and supporting organizations such as the Innocence Network. She has embraced activism with emphasis on mental health, media narratives, and reform, rooted in her personal story and pursuit of justice. She also has her own podcast called Hard Knocks with Amanda Knox. Like I said, I haven't listened to this, and it's not only about wrongful conviction stories. From what I've heard her say about it, it's like she brings on people who have lived through like really crazy experiences that no one else understands, basically.
Okay.
As for Raffaele, while he was in prison, he actually took part in a master's program remotely, like I said. And after his release, he completed his degree and now owns his own business, working as a computer engineer specializing in cloud and hybrid architectures.
Okay.
In 2012, he published his book called Honor Bound, My Journey to Hell and Back with Amanda Knox. And while Raffaele and Amanda never picked their romance back up, they remain close friends to this day. And they explain that this is because they pretty much went through something together that has bonded them forever.
Mm-hmm.
And what's crazy about this is, remember, they know each other for 6 days before Meredith is murdered. Then there's like 4 or 5 more days during interrogations. And then they are imprisoned separately and never see each other except like across the courtroom. So like really they knew each other for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Isn't that fucking crazy? Like,
yeah, that's
I feel it'd be odd. Like they talk about in their books after all of this was like finally over, Raffaele went to the US to visit Amanda and they were both like, it was awkward. And they said they were both nervous and it was just weird. And, you know, they warmed up eventually and got to catch up and talk about their experiences and stuff. I should also note, while they were in prison, I skipped over a lot of the prison stuff. You should, if you think they're innocent and you're okay with it, read their books. It is really interesting just to read about their prison experiences. While they're in prison, they don't talk for a long time because they're pissed at each other because the police have like put them against each other and they think the other one's lying to make the other one look guilty. And then finally, as like stuff is starting to come out in the news, they start to realize what has happened. And Raffaele starts like writing to Amanda. And I think some of this was like lovey-dovey, like in letters, which of course are going to be read. And Amanda was immediately like, no lovey-dovey, like, thank you for supporting me. We cannot talk about the case, whatever. I still support you. Like, I understand, because he's apologizing for misleading the police into thinking she was lying. And she's like, I forgive you, whatever, but we're not in a relationship anymore. We're in fucking prison.
Yeah.
Then for her birthday, like her first birthday in prison, Raffaele had his dad send, or I don't know if he had his dad do it or like he had someone on the outside, like send her flowers to prison.
That's
and
so
obviously
sweet,
she can't
though.
have them.
Yeah, that's sweet, but also
it's sweet if they're innocent. If they're guilty, you're like those messed up motherfuckers. You know?
Yeah.
But if they're innocent, it's very sweet. Now, Patrick Lumumba had lost his livelihood as a result of the accusations against him. His bar in Perugia was shut down during the investigation, and he endured a serious blow to his reputation. And because of all of the lost funds while his bar was shut down, he lost the bar, and he had trouble finding subsequent employment and even had to sell his home due to the financial strain.
That makes me so sad.
Even though he was only in prison for 2 weeks, like all of the suspicion around him didn't just end immediately. Like people still thought for a long time that he might have been involved. And guys, he was not involved. That is the one person in this case that I will tell you, I am 1,000% sure had nothing to do with this. Okay. Now, I am happy to report, however, despite all of this, he seems to be doing much better these days. And he and his family actually moved to Poland, where his wife, Ola, was from. And they seem to be living happy there from what I can find online. Now, Menini retired in 2020. Thank the Lord. Huzzah to that.
Get him out of there.
Huzzah to that. All right. And apparently I accidentally deleted part of this audio file, or it stopped recording at that point in the story. But it's okay. We don't have too much left to go. So I am now just realizing this as I was editing. So I'm finishing it out alone. But don't worry, we don't have too much. So Rudy Guede only ended up serving 13 years of his 16-year sentence, which was something while we were recording the last couple episodes, I had forgotten about the fact that he didn't even serve his full reduced sentence of 16 years. Like, he only served 13 years for what he did to Meredith Kercher, which is a fucking travesty in my book. Now, on November 24th, 2021, he was released due to good behavior, which I never understand that for brutal murderers, but okay. And he did have to do some community service to complete his sentence prior to his release, but he also got to spend some time, going to school, getting degree credits, and working within society as part of like a daytime release program. And then he would go back to prison at night. I have briefly heard of this before in other cases, but this is so odd to me that they would let someone involved in such a violent crime be a part of a program like that. But who's to say what's right or wrong? Not me. I know nothing. I'm not a professional. So in December of 2023, Guede was accused of physical abuse, personal injury, and sexual assault by his ex-girlfriend, leading to an Italian court to impose a restraining order. He was placed under a special surveillance regime in February 2024, which included wearing an electronic ankle monitor, avoiding contact with his accuser, and needing to notify police before leaving his city of residence. Now, he is scheduled to stand trial in November 2025 over the alleged sexual assault and mistreatment of the ex-girlfriend. So we will keep you updated on what happens there. But authorities have allegedly, this is what I'm reading online, nothing has been proven in a court of law yet, but authorities have collected extensive digital evidence, which I read included 100,000 photos and thousands of messages. And I don't know if maybe that was like a typo. Like, I could see 10,000 photos, but 100,000 photos is a lot. Like, I constantly have to delete stuff in my phone because I have so many pictures and videos and stuff for the podcast. I probably have 12 to 14,000 videos and pictures in my phone, and I constantly am having to delete them. I'm like, where are these 100,000 photos being stored? And I don't know what they're of. So we're gonna have to wait until that trial and see what comes out in court, what's released to the media. But just to end off on where Rudy's at is fuck Rudy Guede. I don't think he served enough time. I don't think he ever should have been let out for this crime. And I understand that probably legally, based on the law in Italy, that this was appropriate. I'm not saying that they did anything wrong here. I'm just saying that maybe we should rethink the law a little bit. Maybe we should rethink that. And that doesn't just go for the Italian justice system. That goes for the American justice system too, because we see this happen all the time here, where people are predators. They kill and rape for the sake of raping and killing, and we just let them out because of good behavior and say they're going to be rehabilitated. And I don't think the people who are just doing it for the sake of killing, they hunt down victims that they don't even know or barely even know just for the enjoyment of killing. I don't think those people, personally, I have a very hard time believing that those people can be rehabilitated. Now, we talk about where everyone is today, but I want to pause for a moment to remember the person at the heart of this tragedy, Meredith Kercher, who is not here today, whose brutal murder often fades into the background amid sensational headlines and retold controversies. It's a painful truth that media coverage, and yes, even our own coverage, has focused more on Amanda than Meredith herself. And I do feel like I've been redundant with explaining that to you guys. I feel like we have gotten to the place in this story where you have to talk so much about Amanda, you don't have a choice. If you're trying to understand and get to the truth of what may have happened here, you have to go through every detail you can find about Amanda. It's unfortunate, but it's true. But, I hope that you guys feel like we've done a good job of kind of turning it around from part one and giving Meredith the focus and the attention that she deserves. We put a lot of time and energy and love into doing that. So I hope we've done a good job of it. Now what I will say is, as someone who believes that Amanda and Raffaele did not participate in the rape and murder of Meredith Kercher, and again, this is my belief can be wrong. It's possible that I am wrong about that. But as someone who truly believes that, I do believe that there were also injustices inflicted upon Amanda and Raffaele, as well as Patrick Lumumba, of course. We all know that Patrick was a victim of injustice in this case. And I believe that these three are victims of systemic error and public frenzy. And although their suffering does not match the horror that Meredith endured, I believe it's wrong to ignore how the system preyed on their vulnerabilities. I also think that with the harm done against the three innocent defendants, again, in my opinion, but also legally, they are considered not guilty, all three of them at this point in time. But I think with the harm done against them, even more irreparable harm was done against Meredith Kercher's family. I see Meredith Kercher's family as major victims here, not just because their daughter and their sister was brutally taken away from them, but because of the way this investigation and all of these trials played out. This was obviously going to be the most horrific and painful thing that they ever lived through, no matter what. But I do think that the way that this played out caused them more pain, more confusion, more harm, more frustration. And of course, I don't know them, so I don't know their opinion. I don't know that to be a fact. But from my outside perspective, I see that very likely to be true. And here's the thing is, there's a lot of people that play a role in that. And obviously, I think the media plays a huge role, and it depends on, what writers and what media sources that you're looking at. But I think the biggest role that was played here was some of this prosecution and investigation team. And it wasn't just one prosecutor. It wasn't just Giuliano Mignini at fault. There were dozens of investigators, lab experts, and attorneys that followed his lead. And the media just amplified that drama. And to me, like I've stated multiple times, I don't believe that they did this because they wanted to frame innocent people. I don't believe that they did this because they just wanted to close the case and they didn't care if Amanda and Raffaele were innocent or guilty. Personally, I believe that they did this because they truly believed that Amanda and Raffaele were involved and they were willing to do anything to get justice for Meredith. But here's the thing. This is why there are limitations to the law. This is why there are international standards. This is why there are parameters that you're supposed to operate within. We are clouded by our emotions. All of us are. I'm sure there's going to be a time when I'm going to say something on this podcast and you guys are going to be like, I don't like that. And I'm going to say, you know what? You're right. I let my emotions get the best of me. And I think that's what happened here. I think personal biases about how young women should behave when it comes to their sexual endeavors. I can't think of a better word. Their sexual whatever they're doing, who they're having sex with, how often they're having sex, how well they know these people that they're having sex with. I think these things about Amanda Knox played a major role in why she was looked at as someone possibly evil, why she was looked at as this sort of she-devil. Which, if you believe that sex is a sacred thing only between a married couple, you have every right to believe that. And Giuliano Mignini has every right to believe that. What he doesn't have the right to do is to involve that personal belief into his investigation. And I think that they started with a belief based on Amanda's odd behavior, which you guys know. I do find her behavior suspicious. And I think it's totally fair to look at that behavior and say, we need to look into her. We need to keep an eye on her. We need to ask her more questions. I absolutely think that that is part of the investigation. That is part of the investigator's job. However, you also have to follow the evidence. And that's where I feel like they missed it here. They missed the mark, is the evidence was leading them away from their initial suspicion of Amanda, but they didn't let the evidence lead them. And I know some people are going to disagree with me, and maybe I'm wrong, but this is just how I see it. And to me, the real danger and really the lesson of this story lies in how good intentions can distort justice. I think that these investigators, I think that Giuliano Mignini, their intentions were good. They wanted justice for Meredith, like we all do. But you can't twist the evidence to fit what you believe is justice. You can't. And to me, the pressing question here is, how did this pursuit of what they thought was right, of what they thought was justice, go so terribly wrong? And how can we all learn from that and try and avoid those things? How can we avoid that in the future? And I think that in order to do that, we have to apply an intersectional lens to investigations. And we need to question how our personal beliefs, how our cultural bias and our cultural norms and our social norms influence our view of other people, of individuals, of their guilt or innocence. And in this case, how that might influence our view of a woman who was maybe embracing her sexuality, who sought attention. And whether or not these are good character traits or bad character traits or whatever, that's not the point. The point is Amanda Knox having sexual encounters with 7 men is not illegal. That's not a crime. She did nothing wrong. So just because that doesn't align with your personal beliefs about morality doesn't mean that they are pointing towards guilt. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I'm trying to. Now, the media, for its part, I think must do better. Ethical coverage demands prioritizing facts over the headlines, context over the clickbait, and victims over the entertainment. And that's something that I think no one will ever do perfectly. We will never be perfect at it. But all we can do is try and learn from these stories and try and be better. All we can do is learn from our own mistakes and try and be better. Like I said, I told you guys, I heard part 1. I said, this wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I came back and I said, hey guys, I made a mistake. I'm going to fix it. Let's be better. And I think on the flip side, we also have to allow people to do that. We have to let people recognize their mistakes and allow them to fix it. Now, I am really, really, really bummed that we lost the ending of this episode because we kind of ended with a discussion on our final thoughts. What did we think happened in this case? What did we think about the guilt or innocence of Amanda and Raffaele? So I'm going to start with my opinion, and then I'll kind of try and summarize Emily's a little bit. So I feel 100% certain that there was plenty of reasonable doubt, and that at that second trial, they never should have been convicted again. I don't know how that happened. I believe that the court ended with the right conclusion, that they should have been found not guilty. However, I will not sit here and tell you I am 100% sure that they are completely innocent. I feel relatively certain that they did not participate in the rape and murder of Meredith Kercher. I feel pretty certain about that. I was not there. I do not know, but I do not think there's evidence pointing to them participating in this. And that's how I felt from the beginning, okay? What I will say, what has changed for me over doing all of this research and what has changed my opinion a tiny bit is I did find a lot more stuff about their statements that to me does not make complete sense and doesn't add up. However, I still really do not think they actively participated because I think there would have been physical evidence of that. I guess personally, I believe that they had nothing to do with this. Really, I believe that they had nothing to do with this. But I do think that there are some things that just don't really add up to me. The timing of the calls, I reviewed this earlier in the episode, so I'm not going to say it all again. But I think there are some things that are questionable to me that I would love a better explanation for, and I don't know that they have one. And so I think there's a small possibility that maybe they know more than what they're saying. So what do you think now?
I mean,
final thoughts, because I would say about the last 15 minutes of the last time we recorded, nowhere to be found. So I did re-record that. And so your final thoughts were gone. Would you like to share with the class?
I mean, I still think that she's innocent, but I just think that her behavior was weird as fuck. But I don't think that there's any way that she could have done it.
I agree. And like when we
there's no evidence at all that says that she did it. Like,
I agree. This was the one thing for me.
A buttload of evidence for fucking, what's his name?
Rudy.
Guede.
Yeah. This was the one thing for me where I thought maybe they know more than what they're saying. Like, I still didn't think they actively participated, but I was like, in my mind, I'm like, I think there's a 5 to 10% chance that they know more than what they're saying. And now I'm like,
if that was the case, then why would they take so long why would they lie about when they called them?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Because I'm like, I'm like, why would they lie about that if they were innocent? Like, that made no sense to me, but they weren't lying. This whole thing
I think you said the only other weird thing was why they turned their phones off, but like also could be explained away.
Yes. Well, I don't even think it was weird that Amanda turned her phone off. I thought it was weird that Raffaele did because he didn't really have a good reason. But the other thing is I got a lot of comments because I was saying she deleted the message with Patrick. And I was like, the only thing I was thinking, that is kind of weird, but the only explanation I could think of is, it's like a flip phone. Was that common to just delete text right away? Because I'm sure there's not a lot of storage. And we got 4 or 5 people that commented or DM'd us saying, oh yeah, absolutely. If you had a flip phone in 2007, there's a delete button on every single text message you open, and you would delete stuff when you were done with it pretty immediately. So
yeah.
I started thinking completely innocent. And then by the end, I was thinking, I'm pretty sure completely innocent, but maybe a small chance that they know more than what they're saying. I'm going back to completely innocent, I think.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with it.
I think I started at all these people think that they did some sketchy shit. Maybe they're right. And now I'm like, nah.
No.
There's no way.
All right. I agree. That's why I was like, this was the one thing we were caught up on. So I'm like, I can't just throw it in there. I have to get Emily's thoughts and feelings on it.
That's fair. Yeah,
okay.
No, I don't think she did it.
All right. Well, I shall dismiss you now. Thank you for your service.
Of course. Anytime.
All right. C2IL. Bye-bye.
C2IL. Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Got a car to sell but no time to waste? Hop on to Carvana.com to get a real offer for your car in seconds. All you have to do is enter your license plate, answer a few quick questions, and if you accept the offer, Carvana will pay you as soon as you hand the keys over. They even offer same-day pickup in many cities. Save your time, score some cash, and sell your car the convenient way to Carvana. Pickup times vary. Fees may apply.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Komm du noch?
If you used Babbel, you would. Babbel's conversation-based techniques teaches you useful words and phrases to get you speaking quickly about the things you actually talk about in the real world, with lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts and voiced by real native speakers. Babbel is like having a private tutor in your pocket. Start speaking with Babbel today. Get up to 55% off your Babbel subscription right now at babbel.com/Spotify. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify. Rules and restrictions may apply.
You're tuned into Auto Intelligence, live from Auto Trader, where data, tools, and your preferences sync to make your car shopping smooth.
They're searching inventory.
Oh, yeah.
They find what you need.
They're gonna find it.
You can make a budget for your wallet to help you succeed. Pricing's precise and true.
So true.
It's smarter car shopping.
Ooh.
Just for you.
Oh, it's just for you. Ooh. Find your next ride at autotrader.com. Powered by Auto Intelligence.
Heather is a nurse practitioner from United Healthcare.
We meet patients wherever they live.
During a house call, she found Jack had an issue.
Jack's blood pressure was dangerously high.
It was 217 over 110.
So they got Jack to the hospital and got him the help he needed.
He had a stent placed in his heart, preventing a massive heart attack.
If it wasn't for my guardian angel, I wouldn't be here.
Hear more stories like Jack's at UnitedHealthcare.com. Benefits, features, and/or devices vary by plan, area, limitation, and exclusions apply.
But what I will say, in the end, is whether they are innocent or whether they are guilty or whether they're somewhere in between, they know more than what they're saying, but they also weren't actively involved, I don't know. No matter what, though, an injustice was done here, especially to Meredith's family. The investigator, they messed this case up. The evidence, not collecting the bra clasp, not recording the interviews, not allowing Amanda to have an attorney, not getting her an interpreter, that is injustice. And it is injustice, even if she is guilty. Not only because they violated her rights, but because of those things. If they are guilty, they were eventually let off for this. They only served 4 years in prison. So even if they are guilty, an injustice was done here to Meredith's family. If they are innocent, an injustice was done to Amanda and Raffaele and Meredith's family. Because this bungled investigation caused confusion. They feel like they don't have the answers. So if they're innocent, I think an injustice was done here. More than just the fact that Meredith's life was taken. I hope that goes without saying. But I'm talking an injustice by the investigators and the prosecution. If they are innocent, an injustice was done against them and Meredith's family. If they are guilty, an injustice was done against Meredith's family. And I think the people that we can fault here are the investigators and the prosecution. Now, let's say they're guilty and the investigators had done a perfect job, which they did not do here. But let's say, theoretically, they had done a perfect job and they did not have enough evidence to convict, and Amanda and Raffaele were freed even though they were guilty. Of course, that would be injustice, but it wouldn't be the fault of the investigators and the prosecution. It would be the fault of Amanda and Raffaele for cleaning up after themselves so perfectly, or however you want to frame it. But that's not the case here. That's not the case here. The case here is they didn't do a good job, in my opinion. But I want to end this case by talking about Meredith. Because we talk a lot about what we can learn from the mistakes in this investigation and all of that, which I think is so important when we're doing a true crime podcast. But not all of us are working in the criminal justice system. Most of you guys listening probably have nothing to do with any part of the criminal justice system or anything like it. So it's like, what can we learn from this case other than what the investigators or prosecution maybe did wrong? And I think we can all learn valuable lessons to implement into our own life from learning about Meredith Kercher's life. Meredith was kind. Meredith was the type of person where it sounds like she didn't like Amanda Knox very much. But Amanda didn't even know because Meredith was so nice anyway. You know what I mean? Like, Meredith was the bigger person. Meredith wasn't going to let Amanda's weirdness turn her into a mean person. And I know we went into detail in part 3 all about who Meredith was and what we can learn from her life. But I think for me, the biggest thing that I learned from Meredith is, well, I guess there's 2. Number 1, don't let other people's faults create faults in yourself. Don't let your annoying, weird roommate turn you into a bully because you can't stand her. Look for the good in people. Look for the good in people you disagree with. Look for the good in people who annoy you. Look for the good in your boss who's kind of an asshole, whatever it may be. You cannot change other people, but you can change how you react to them. And your life is better if you can find a small part of each person that you find enjoyable. So yes, maybe there are 500 things you don't love about this person, but you have to be around them for some reason. Look for the things that make them enjoyable to be around. Appreciate them for who they are, even though you can't really appreciate their faults. Your life will be better off for it. You will be a happier person for it because you can't always control who you're around. And you definitely can't control how they act and how they act to you. But you can control how you feel around them. Maybe they're not your type of person. They're not your ideal person. They don't have your ideal sense of humor or your ideal level of kindness or joy or whatever it may be. But if you can learn to enjoy them for what they are, your life's going to be better. Now, that goes for just people you just don't like. I'm not talking about fucking assholes or like bullies or abusers or anything like that. You know what I mean if you're a normal person. However, the number two thing I learned from Meredith is if you're like me and you have people in your life who are constantly late all the time and it drives you fucking crazy because you're prompt, just let it go. Just let it go. Just let them be late. Tell them the wrong time. Tell them it starts a half an hour before it does. Because if the people you love are late and something happens to them, you will miss them showing up 20 minutes late to everything. And that will be one of your favorite memories of them. Because that's what like every story in Meredith's dad's book talks about. Almost every single person who wrote a passage for that book mentioned, a story where Meredith was late. So huzzah to everybody who's late. Now, if you guys love the pod, make sure you're following us wherever you're listening so you don't miss out on any future episodes.
And while you're at it, we'd be forever in your debt if you had left us a 5-star rating.
For more content from us, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Both are at A Trial by Podcast.
You can also follow us on our Facebook and join our Facebook group.
You can shop our merch by clicking the link in the show notes or visiting our website, atrialbypodcast.com.
A Trial by Podcast is a fully independent podcast. If you'd like to help support us, you can do so by donating through the link in our show notes.
The site we use for this is called Buy Me a Coffee, but don't worry, your donations will never be used for coffee or frivolous things, only for expenses related to running and growing the podcast. So thank you guys for your support.
Thank y'all. Huzzah.
Huzzah.